Welcome back to Dating After Death, a podcast dedicated to the journey of finding love again after losing your forever person. And I am your not-so-anonymous host. Today's guest is Chelsy Wilson, who can be found on Instagram at Chelsy Wilson. And I fell in love with Chelsy because of her stinking adorable baby. I don't know how I ended up following her in the first place, but this baby just captured my heart. So cute. And then, you start checking out somebody's page and you look into their story. Maybe you scroll down to see, when did this person's husband die? When did she get remarried? Or who does the baby belong to? Do you do this? I sort of do this thing where I just dig into people's pages and try to piece together their story. And what I had pieced together with Chelsy is that her husband did in fact pass away several years ago, and then she had since remarried. And we haven't actually talked to somebody who has since remarried after losing their person. So I was so thankful that Chelsy said yes to doing the interview. And I think it is really interesting to listen to her talk about this new loving relationship while still grieving, and also just the complications of new relationship. I feel like even I get really trapped in this idea that we're supposed to have it easier this time around, or we know more and therefore the relationship should be all great all the time. But that's not how relationships work. And she does a beautiful job giving us the reality of the situation and really letting us into what it was like for her and her new husband, Brian, and their family to come together and merge and create something new and beautiful. So I really hope that you enjoy this, and I hope it's hopeful as it was for me. Chelsy and I worked for 45 minutes to get connected technology-wise for this interview. So for whatever reason, we ended up having to do this on FaceTime. So it was a little tricky to edit this episode, and you'll hear, we're kind of stepping over each other a little bit, and the audio isn't the best. But we made it work, and the conversation is ready for you, so it was worth it, even though it's not the quality that I like to put out, but it's all right. The conversation is definitely quality. Before we get started, there's a couple things to talk about. The first is BetterHelp. I'm wondering if you've checked it out yet. I don't know if I have mentioned this to you, but I was super skeptical about doing online therapy at all after my husband died. And so I waited for 6 months because I was I don't want to do therapy online. I want to be in person. And I was stubborn about it until I realized I really needed it. So I have really seen the benefit of online therapy in that I can put a movie on for my kids and pop upstairs and put on my headphones and have this amazing conversation with my therapist right from the comfort of my home. And BetterHelp offers that for you too. They have a wide selection of therapists for you to choose from. You can really niche down who you're looking for. The benefits are really seriously amazing. If you go to BetterHelp, HELP.com/datingafterdeath, you will get 10% off your first month of membership. So I hope you check that out if you are still looking for therapy. And I do want to do a quick plug for our Patreon. We have people who are starting to get into the Facebook group. We're starting to get some conversations going. I have decided we're going to do a What the Wednesday? I guess it could be anything really, this person sent me a text message on the apps and or how am I supposed to respond to that? Or maybe it's more I am in a super committed relationship with someone new and they just said this and I'm not sure how to handle that and I need some feedback. What would you do? We're also building a new playlist, and if you are somebody who is into music, the Facebook group is the place to suggest songs and we will share that playlist out. But that's the place to put in your recommendations. And then I just had a conversation with one of my best friends the other night about what it has been like for her to support me going through this, and I am going to add that to the bonus content just this week. So if you have not yet checked out the Patreon, go ahead and do that. It's at patreon.com/datingafterdeath. Even that entry tier, which is just at $5 a month, gives you access to the Facebook group and is just kind of a way for you to say thank you for making the podcast. So if you are up for that, I would so appreciate it, and we would love to have you. Now that we have taken care of business, let's get to the chat with Chelsy. All right.
Let's go.
So we're doing FaceTime. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. Hi, Chelsy.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay. So first, I'd just like to start by asking you about Kyle, really, and having you tell us about him and about your marriage and what that was like.
Well, Kyle and I met Kyle when I was 18 at the end of my freshman year in college. And it was totally just young love, instant, could not get enough of each other. You know what I'm saying? And we just instantly became best friends. my girlfriends will say, like, from college, they'll be like, oh my gosh, all you ever wanted to do was hang out with Kyle. And that was just like the truth. Like, my college experience was Kyle. Like, he played college baseball and I played tennis, and so we were both really busy, but in like every waking moment it was just, I mean, I remember when I met him, it was like 4 weeks later, he was leaving for the summer, and I came home and my parents were just like, who is this guy, because you are like so like lovesick. And yeah, and that was kind of just it. And that was, we dated for 5 years, long distance, and we kind of just always were like, you chase your dreams, I'll chase mine, and we knew we were going to be together. Never even thought my life would not have Kyle. And yeah, I got my master's, he played minor league baseball, he finished school, but it was always just the two of us. And then we got married, we were young, I was 24, he was 25, ended up moving to where I live now. We had no family, just kind of where we both got jobs. And I like never needed anybody as long as I had Kyle. Like, I was just literally obsessed with him.
Yeah.
And I'd say he was equally as obsessed with me. And I mean, my friends now, it was just his birthday. And some of my friends, I asked them to write like letters or whatever for the kids about things the kids might not remember. And everyone's like, we don't want to offend Brian. I was like, oh, Brian won't be offended. And but they're just like, you guys were literally like all over each other all the time. Like, just could not, I mean, even being married for, let's see, we got married in 2007 and he passed in 2018. It was just before our 11th wedding anniversary. Just best friends. He was the best guy. I mean, I don't know how, always made everybody feel like they were the most important person. But I knew without a fact, like, we were his priority, the kids and I.
Yeah.
Just a great human. Yeah. Great husband. We had a great marriage.
And can you tell us, just because of, like, I feel like it sort of builds context for people, how it ended, if you're comfortable?
Yeah. So we, super healthy guy. Like, we both played collegiate Division I sports, but he never liked, like, working out. Like, for me, that's a passion. And I never really cared because I could cook and he would eat the food. And, like, he always, like, jokingly called me a chubby chaser. He's like, oh, Chelsy, you're a chubby chaser. After our daughter was born, he had, like, gained some weight. And the doctor had told him, oh, like, your blood pressure's getting kind of high. Like, you should try to lose, like, 20 pounds, you know, and then come back and we'll see if we don't need to put you on medication. Anyways, long story short, he, like, I could care less. But he totally, like, lost the 20 pounds and then lost 20 more, got really into working out. So that had been, like, 3 years prior to his passing. So just, like, eating really healthy, taking care of himself. And so had just had a major physical in May of 2018. Kind of a weird story, because he had come to me and he was like, hey, like, I just feel like if something were to happen, he, like, always want to make sure we were all taken care of. So he's like, if something happens to you or to me, like, I just want to make sure, like, your lifestyle would not change. And he would, like, joke with me, like, you know, I know you'll like, totally be fine. Like, you would bounce right back. You're going to marry some, like, old rich guy. Like, you would be totally good. And I was like, oh, my gosh, stop. Like, I did not do anything. Like, I legit had the life.
Yeah.
And Kyle would tell me, I want to come back as you, you know? Like, I didn't take care of any bills. Like, I kind of just did my thing. And he's like, no, Chelsy, like, you really need to pay attention. I went and got this physical. Like, I increased our life insurance. Like, you need to know what I'm doing. You know, like, you got to pay attention. I was like, okay. And, but he passed, like, his health, like, had this full-blown physical.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, my gosh, you're, like, the healthiest person. And then, so that was May. And then fast forward to October, we went out of town for our daughter's 5th birthday. She had just turned 5, like, a few days before, so I took her to Disneyland. And then we went to out to Palm Springs in California. And, like, I'm really close with my 2 sisters and their families. And we're never all together in the same house. And we had randomly got this house this weekend with all of us staying in it. And, yeah, we just, like, golfed and swam. We don't do drugs. We don't smoke.
Yeah.
We drink, but, you know, like really healthy people.
Yeah.
And so we had just had the best day, and my parents lived kind of close to where we were renting the house, so they came to watch the kids, and we went to dinner and had a great dinner. It was just my sisters, their husbands, and Kyle and I, and my sisters wanted to go out after dinner. They're much more wild than I am. And I was like, oh, I kind of just like want to go back to the house. And they were like, come on, Kyle, let's go out. And I remember he was like, whatever Chelsea wants, Chelsea gets. So we're gonna, you know, we're gonna head back. And we came back and tucked the kids into bed and had some fun. And then I just remember I like woke up and I thought he was snoring, but he didn't snore. So I remember like being a little startled. And then I was like, what is happening? I thought he was having a seizure, which was weird too. And yeah, it was pretty quick. So he just passed in his sleep. And I witnessed it. And then my sisters and their husbands had just, I had remembered, like, I knew kind of a time frame, but they had come back. I remember hearing them come in, and then I fell asleep. So, yeah, and he died at the house, and the kids were all there, and thank God. I mean, I remember just like, you know, vomiting and losing control of my bowels, and just praying like, please don't let my kids wake up. Like, they cannot wake up.
Yeah. And
they did, and they never did. I do not know how. Like, we had, because there was like police officers, and, you know, then you have to wait for the coroner to come, because he had just turned 36. And yeah, I mean, I waited multiple autopsies. Like, literally, the autopsy says like died of natural causes.
What?
Yeah.
That just
had like multiple tests done. They think that I had like an expert like look at it more, and they think that basically he had like an underlying, like a heart arrhythmia that just went undetected his whole life, and his heart just got out of sync and couldn't get back in, and your heart, it just stops. And if you don't have a like defibrillator, you know, right there, yeah, like no explanation. I've literally just had to make peace with it, because otherwise I would be in the loony bin. Yeah. So
I'm sure you could just spiral and spiral.
It just doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
And so I think pretty early on I learned I had to just let that go.
Yeah.
Or I was going to be miserable for my whole life.
Yes. That's what I did too, because my husband's was also very sudden in the middle of the night, and COVID, so I couldn't be there. And, you know, they even asked, do you want an autopsy? And I was like, what's the point? Like, he can't come back anyway. So just like, you know, and you're sort of in a daze, and you're just like, whatever. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Don't even. Yeah.
But yeah, you got to just move forward. That's so hard, but.
Yeah. And I had been asked randomly, like 3 weeks before, I had been asked, maybe it was like a month before, I was walking with a friend, and she's like, do you ever worry like something's just going to happen? Like, your life's so good. And I was like, no, not really. Like, I mean, I know, like, I never look at my life as perfect. I have issues, you know, we all have stuff. And so even though I was very happy, but we just worked really hard at our marriage. And I was like, you know, like, I just don't worry. Like, whatever life throws at us, like, as long as I have Kyle, like, I'll be okay. And it was after that I had started thinking of, I don't know if you know the Amanda Griffiths. She's a fellow. No. She was like the only person I knew, and I didn't even know her. Like, I had just seen on Facebook way back in the day that she had lost her husband. She was pregnant, lost her husband, her father, and her brother-in-law in a small plane crash. Oof. And after my friend had asked me this, I started asking, like, oh my gosh, like, hey, Kyle, do you remember that girl? And like, I couldn't remember her name. I'm like, remember? And he was like, kind of, but like, if it's bothering you, why don't you look her up? And I was like, well, I don't know her name. So anyways, I ended up Googling her, found her on Instagram. Yeah. Friended her, which is, again, so not like me.
Yes. I'll link her page.
Kind of just started like seeing her stuff. And I told Kyle, I was like, gosh, like, all this like total tragedy happened in her life. Yeah. And this was like now a couple years past, and I could see she had met somebody and they had a baby. And I was like, holy cow, like, if she can be happy, Like, anybody can be happy.
Yeah.
You know, it's Instagram, but you could just feel like she had a joy about her.
Yes.
And so after Kyle passed, like, I reached out to her immediately.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know you, but I don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so lost.
Yeah.
And she responded, and I remember her very first thing she said to me was, Chelsea, like, of course, I'm so sorry that you know this pain, but I promise you, you will smile again.
Yeah.
Your kids will smile again. And she said, you will love again.
Mm.
And she goes, I know you don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But you will.
Yeah.
Like, I promise. And I was just like, oh, please, like, get lost. You know?
Yeah. Just the timing and.
Yeah, but then I just kept, like, I came back to her advice multiple times, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, that's the perfect segue into how did that all get started for you then? And like when?
So I never like planned to date, get into the dating world, nothing like that. And I don't think people prepare you. How could they? But, you know, when you lose your spouse, especially if you are in a healthy, affectionate marriage, like I was like so craving intimacy and touch, and I just missed that.
Totally.
You know,
yes.
Brian kind of like got dropped into my like literally life. And I tell him, I'm like, oh, I would have like come on to you. I would have come on to anybody at that point.
Yes. I've told this story before on the podcast, but like the first guy that I slept with after my husband, and there have only been two, but I like pounced. He was like, maybe we should wait. And I was like,
Yeah. I was just telling my girlfriends that. Again, I think when you're used to that, you know, and my therapist always told me that too, like, you were in a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
Had you been in an unhealthy marriage, like, you would have to work through the grief and then also the unhealthy habits and what to look for in somebody.
Yeah. But
you already know what you deserve and what's healthy.
Yeah.
And so you know how to recognize that.
Yeah. So how did Brian come into your life?
So he actually, I had met him twice before. He worked with Kyle a little bit.
Okay.
He lived in LA, but is from where we live. And I just knew him as like, Kyle really liked him, and he was like this young, because he's younger than me. So it was like, oh, this young guy, like, I just love this young kid, you know? And so he'd come to like Kyle's work Christmas parties, him and so after Kyle passed, he came to the funeral, which I don't remember at all. And then his boss, Brian's boss, is married to a woman who was engaged, and her fiance passed in his sleep. Okay. And very similar. And so after Brian's boss just like, and he's my age, he and his wife just started like reaching out constantly, doing really nice things. And so I kind of formed this friendship with them. And then a few months later, after Kyle passed, it was like Kyle's Christmas work party. So like 2.5 months later, and they were going to come up for it. And I hadn't been out, or, you know, I mean, like maybe once. And they're like, oh, are you going to go? And I was like, because I had been invited. And I thought, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that sounds hard.
And they're like, no, come. We'll pick you up. Like, you do not go alone. And so, they picked me up. And that's when I would have just, like, pounced on Brian that night. Like, he was like, no. You know, like, dude, this chick's crazy. But, we just kind of formed a friendship from that night of, like, mutual things we had in common, and really thought nothing of it. Started texting after that, and he would just, send me music or send me this. And I ended up being able to, like, talk to him about Kyle, because he knew Kyle. Yeah. And at that point, I felt like I was not a burden to my friends, but, like, they were with me all day. Yeah. I had I think for 2 months someone slept at my house. And then after that, I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this by myself. But, they'd be here all day. And then they had their own families to go home to. And I would always tell them, like, you need to go home. Like, you have families. But I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And so I'd be up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning after my kids went to bed. And Brian just became, like, gradually the friend that I could stay up and talk to on the phone till 2, 3 in the morning because he didn't have a family.
Yeah.
And he would just stay up and we would just talk about, like, I think half the time he'd stay on the phone until I fell asleep.
Oh my gosh.
And he just became like that person. And then he had asked me, oh, do you want to do a triathlon? I was like, like I was at this point, I was saying yes to things. So I was like, sure, why not? Like, but you have to train me. I think because he lived, 3.5 hours away. Had he lived in town, this would not have worked.
Oh, interesting.
But it allowed me to build a relationship with him while still having space.
Yeah.
To grieve, not feeling pressure, just like organically grow.
Yeah.
Not feeling any like suffocation or what is happening, or is this turning into something, or do I have to see him, and so it was just so natural. Even, so his parents live in town, and so he would start coming. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, even with the kids, it was just like, oh, it's Daddy's friend. Like,
yeah.
And we were just friends, and now he's my friend. And so he would just come and hang out at the house for a little bit and then leave, and we would just like run or work out or hang out with the kids. And it was very low key.
Nothing romantic in those early.
No, I think he was probably freaked out a little bit. Okay. Like, he said he never wanted to like do anything that would eventually hurt me more unless he knew he was going to stay.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Which I, on the other hand, was more like, oh my gosh, at first, like, I had feelings. And again, who did I reach out to? I reached out to that Amanda Griffith.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, she's the first person I told. Like, I didn't tell a single soul.
Yeah.
When the feelings started coming. And I told her, I'm like having feelings for him. Like, this is really freaking me out. I never saw this coming. We were friends. And she was like, no, like, you're being so brave for allowing your heart to be open. And she told me, and I will never forget this, because I felt like if I start dating him, I have to be with him, because then I'm going to hurt my kids again.
Yes, I felt that too.
And she told me, she's like, Chelsy, even if this does not work out, your kids will be better off for seeing you open your heart to love again.
Totally.
They can handle it if it doesn't work out, and they will be better off because you will be better for allowing love into your life.
I love that advice.
And I was like, wow, okay.
Yes.
And that's when I was like, okay.
Yeah. And I just also think, like, we've all already been through the hardest thing. So, like, this is one thing my therapist is always saying, like, it might be sad and hard to lose something delicious, but, like, you've already done the hardest thing. So, like, set yourself up for the good things just in case it works out.
Yes.
That's great advice.
So, there was one point where, like, we were like friends, and we were talking about like bucket list things, and because I thought all my dreams had died, I was never going to do anything.
Yeah.
And I said I really wanted to go to Red Rocks in Denver. Mm-hmm. And this was like in January. And so this was newer, like we were just texting and friends and whatever. And he texted me that he bought me tickets. Like, he's like, okay, we're going to go to Red Rocks in July.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, holy shit, July? Like, what if I don't want to, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, what if I do not want to be your friend in July?
Yes.
And there was a moment I was like, maybe he likes me, because why would he just buy, which that is not his personality at all.
Yeah.
So that is very out of character for him. Like, his friends are like, what?
Just like the like spontaneity of doing that, you mean?
Yes.
That's so funny. I can just like tell another story that connects the same, where when I started dating my boyfriend, he was like, let's go to this concert in October. We started dating in May. And I was like, what are you planning on October for?
Yes.
I'm like, we're just dating. What are you doing?
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, my gosh. But, it's interesting. And then when I started having feelings, it was interesting because my closest friends And my sisters, when I saw them, immediately knew something was up. They were like, okay, is something going on with this Brian guy? We know you guys are friends. Like, there's a change in you, a lightness that they hadn't seen. Yeah. I think it made it easier for my closest friends, harder for not my inner circle. Yeah. And when he would come to town and things shifted, it's funny, I would make us drive like way to the other side of town to go to dinner. You don't want anybody to see you. No, because I already felt like our town is like big but small, and I felt like everywhere I went, everybody knew. Yep. And I just didn't want people in my business. It's a weird thing dating, because I felt like, and I know I have other widow friends who have felt this, you weirdly like feel like you owe people an explanation. Yeah. When you start dating, and everyone seems to have an opinion about it. And looking back, I'm like almost annoyed at myself. Like, why did I feel like I owed to like let people know? It's no one's business, It's between me and the kids, and that's it. But I felt I had to sit down and like tell people. Me too. Okay. Yeah, and then it got weird, like because he worked with Kyle. So then certain people were funny about it, or and everybody loves Brian. Yeah. But then he would get like, are you sure? Like people giving him it, and then I would get so mad, like, what? You're not you're not able to make your own decisions? Is there something wrong with me because my husband died? Like, people feel like they need to like warn you. Be careful, Brian. Like, this is a lot. Like, yeah, it is a lot. But so how did you guys go from friend zone to more? Yeah, I definitely crossed that. I think it was me that made the first move. Yeah. I was, at the time, this made it way easier too. I don't have any family here. We had a babysitter. She's more like family, but Kyle and I did. And so after Kyle passed, she quit her job, left her sorority house, she's in college, and moved in with me for a year. What? Oh yeah, it was. That's amazing. Amazing. I mean, yeah, Jordan is like a total godsend, and I wish she still lived with me. And so it gave me that like respite that I so needed, because my parents weren't coming, Kyle's parents weren't coming. Yeah. My sisters would come, but they have their own family. Yeah. And so like, you just like desperately like need a break. Yes. When you're in it, if you're solo parenting, I mean, it's just so much. And so I was able to like escape for like a night, and I could go to LA. Yeah. And so I had decided to go down and see him and get my own hotel, all this stuff. And I think that's kind of when things had already like crossed the line, but he was like, I really like you. Yeah. And I've done a lot of thinking. And he's 5 years younger than me, so. And I struggled with it a bit, because I'm like, you're living in LA, like, you're successful, you've never been married. Yeah. Like, I know I'm worth it. I don't struggle with confidence, but it's a lot, and your life could be a lot easier. Yeah. And he was like, well, Chelsy, like, this is what I want. Yeah. And were you guys clearly on the marriage path once you had that conversation? Yes, but I think from the beginning, Brian kind of always just let me take the lead. Okay. Because it was just like, where do I feel comfortable? It's such a different dating experience. Yes. Very comfortable with his family. His family, like his dad lost his dad at 5. His stepmom lost her dad when she was young. Yeah. And so they were very welcoming. My family, super welcoming, hesitant, because they were so close with Kyle, and they only knew me with Kyle. Yeah. I mean, it's like Kyle's very best childhood friend. He's like, he texted me the other night, and he's like, he says this all the time. Him and Brian have become good friends. And he's like, just wanted to hate him so badly. Like, I just wanted to hate him. And I like love the guy. Like, I would do anything for him. Yeah. And obviously that's how most people feel. Not everybody. I've lost friends. Kyle's parents are not even still. They just have a really hard time with it. Do they have a relationship with your kids? Yes, it's been pretty rocky.
Okay.
So we just celebrated Kyle's 4th birthday since he passed, and this is the first time we celebrated together. I invited them. No expectations. They come if they want, you know, whatever. But yeah, they're one of the people I had told them I felt like I owed them that explanation. And so they live 3 hours away, and I took the kids to see them, and I know they thought like something was up, but I wanted them to hear from me. And so I told them, and it ended really, really badly. Like, you're a whore. And like, he's using you for sex and money.
Oh my God.
Like, no.
No.
And so that's been really hard to recover from.
Of course. Can I ask you a question about that? Because a lot of people, I get a lot of DMs about this, about the in-laws and how hard this is. I have particularly understanding and wonderful in-laws, so it's hard for me to give too much advice here.
Yeah.
But like, when you look back on that conversation, how did you sort of handle it? And then like, I don't know, if you could redo it, is there anything you would change?
No. I mean, I probably wish I would have done it in my house. But I was trying to I have a counseling background. I have my master's in counseling. So I'm pretty intuitive. Yeah. I think things through. I did not think it would go that bad. We didn't have a great relationship prior to Kyle passing. Okay. There had been definitely Kyle loved his parents loved Kyle. I love his parents, they love me. But it was it had been rocky. Yeah. So that adds, to it. And, anytime I feel like your spouse passes, it's like Kyle was the one that talked to his parents. Yeah. And so then I became, the communicator, and we just don't communicate the same way. Let's lay it out. Yeah. They're a shove it under the rug. Yeah. I've heard a lot of that too. I wish I just didn't care as much. Yeah. I wish I didn't feel like I needed their approval.
It's just so hard with the kids, right?
Yeah. And actually that's the whole thing is I know that their disapproval of it has directly impacted their relationship with the kids. And because my kids love Brian. Yeah. And so they've witnessed that they're not very kind. And I've told them, I was like, hey, the kids are getting bigger, and you don't have to love Brian. You don't have to approve of it, but you do have to be you need to be respectful. Yeah. And kind, or this isn't going to work. I've had to set very clear boundaries. Yeah. And if you don't, just know it does impact your relationship with the kids, which they don't believe, but it does.
Well, and it's so hard because it's what do they really expect from you?
I do think, for them, especially because they don't live in town, Brian is a very physical reminder that Kyle's not here. Yeah. So they can kind of compartmentalize it until they're around. And then when they're around, it's whoa.
There's a man in his spot.
Then they have to face their grief. Yeah. And it's gotten a little better. But again, I have seen with families, it's one of two ways. It's either super supportive. Yeah. Or not. And my parents, they totally love Brian and support him. But I mean, after Kyle died, it's true. It's I remember my therapist saying, Chelsy, death doesn't change people. It cements who they really are. And that has just stuck with me because I think as humans, we think in the worst situation, you would expect somebody to act a certain way. Yeah. But they usually act how they've always acted. Yeah. Yeah. And so I have had to remind myself that, even though I expected, my parents would come more or show up more, or that Kyle's parents would come more and play catch with my kid, or take my daughter, shopping and do things with them. They never did that before. Yeah. So this is just who they are. Yeah. It could be so much easier.
Okay, can I ask you some questions about you and Brian?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so also, I mean, I have this question of how does Kyle play into your relationship with Brian? But I feel because of the way you started this relationship where it was so in depth and on the phone, at least for me, I get that because my boyfriend's also it's an hour, but it's long distance. Okay, so we're on the phone every night, you know.
Yeah.
It means you're like building such depth.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that Kyle's just like a regular part of the discourse in your house.
Yes. I made a point at the beginning to like not compare them.
Yes.
Because they are very similar, but then they're very different too. Yeah. And I do think like Brian probably wouldn't have wanted to be married to like Chelsy, who was married to Kyle. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm different people. Doesn't mean it's never happens.
Yeah, of course.
But I fight really hard not to do that. It usually just happens when I'm like annoyed. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yes, that's a very good point.
And then with kids, you know, it's like he's part of, and I think because he knew Kyle not super well, but enough, he did have some instant respect, especially with our son, Kellen.
Yeah. Like,
hey, like, I know your dad would not approve of that either, you know, or I know your dad would be proud of you, or.
Does Brian say stuff like that?
Oh, at times, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
And I talked to Kellen about that because I remember this is more parenting, but had talked to a friend who lost their mom at a young age. And she had said, like, everybody made her out to be this, like, perfect human.
Yes.
Which she was a great person. And that when she was in high school, though, it got really hard. Like, I'm never going to live up to be like my mom.
Totally.
And only her mom's best friend would be like, well, you know, your mom, like, she had a bad mouth. Or, you know. Like,
yes, I think that's so important.
Yeah, so I make sure to let the kids know, like, you know, especially, like, hey, your dad did this or this. Or, hey, like, I'm mad and Brian's mad. And your dad he would be mad at you too.
Yeah.
You know, this is not okay.
Yes, totally.
You know, talking back or whatever.
Yeah. And I think for the kids to know that their father's like a real human with flaws, so they don't have to live up to that unrealistic expectation. I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, could somebody else also please tell my kids that he had flaws?
Yeah. Totally.
But nobody wants to do that.
No.
Okay, another question I have. Oh, was it hard for Brian to come into your family, knowing you already had 2 kids, being that he had never been married or had kids before?
Yeah, I mean, so he moved here in January 2020.
Okay.
And again, it was just like one of those things that was so bizarre. It was on Kyle's birthday, and I was with my girlfriend and my sisters, and I swore I would never go back to Palm Springs. I was never going to do it ever in my life. And it's like weird, life just sets you up. And it was like, I was like, okay, I'll go. I'm going to go on Kyle's birthday and face this. I was sitting there and I was like, I just had this instant peace, like, Brian, you should move here. You need to start talking to work. Like, and he's like, really? Because he was, again, just waiting for me for my lead, you know?
Yeah.
And we weren't engaged or anything. Again, lots of judgment. Oh, you're going to live with somebody?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm not 19 anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm going to do this my way. And I think people who knew me with Kyle, like, I'm kind of a homebody. I really respect family time. But then there were some friends I had made that didn't really know me with Kyle.
Yeah.
And so then Brian came along and moved, and it was like, now you're spending all your time with Brian. And it's like, whoa, well, we are having to go. I mean, him moving here completely changed. Like, I thought I had dealt with so much of my grief. And then when he was actually in the house, that brought out a whole other layer with me and the kids. Like, okay, because they were part of that decision like, I had made the decision, but I made them believe that they were, you know, part of it.
Good parenting.
Of him moving here, not just like, oh, he's going to move here, you know?
Yeah, of course.
And, yeah, I mean, that was like rough. And the process of allowing him to parent, and it was really rough. And then COVID hit.
Oh, man.
And then we were, you know, all trapped. It was probably the best thing that could have happened to our family. But I think people don't, unless like my really close friends don't realize, like, yes, it was great, but it was really hard.
I'm sure.
I mean, we literally had to know, like, okay, we are in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
Because there were plenty of times where I had wanted to be like, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is like, and especially when, I don't know if you can relate to this, I'm like, I had a good marriage. I put in the work.
Yes.
Like, I was with someone for a long, since 2002 was when Kyle and I first started dating. So I'm like, I put in that foundational work. Like, I don't want to do it again.
Yes.
Because I know a good marriage takes a lot of work. Like we were so and like to start over, like I don't want to start over. I just want to get to the good part.
Yes.
But you can't get to the good part without putting in the hard work,
Totally.
you know? And I was just like, I just want to give up half the time.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to communicate. Like, I want someone who already knows what I want.
Yeah.
Like, don't you already know what I want? Like, no, I don't know you like that well yet.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
We'll say, like, see, oh my gosh, you're so lucky you have Brian. And I am so lucky that I have Brian. But I'm like, I always tell people, like, and it still is, but it's starting, I feel like we're finally in our, like, flow, in our groove.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that first year, hard.
Yeah. I think that's actually even really hopeful for me to hear, because my husband and my boyfriend have very different communication styles. And so when things come up, I mean, that is happening to me now, where I'm just like we're just like in a little bit of an argument, and I'm just like, I could just walk away from this, you know, but like, I don't want to. Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's so much foundational work you did with your spouse you have to do again. And it feels like I should be past that part. We should be at the easy part.
I would have to remind myself, like, oh my gosh, I did used to get mad at Kyle. Like, because when I think of like our marriage towards the end, like we would bicker here and there maybe, but not like no like major fights.
Yes. Yeah.
But then I have to like think back and be like, oh my gosh, we had to like work. We didn't communicate the same way when we first started dating, you know?
Well, that's really, I really love to hear this inside scoop, just because like I'm even guilty of looking at your Instagram page and being like, oh my God, she's so lucky, you know,
and like,
which you are
lucky and I feel happy, but it was really hard.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think we isolated before COVID, like when we moved here, because like there was just so many dynamics we had to figure out.
Yeah. Did you guys know you were going to have a baby right away? Like, did you both?
Well, that we talked about before we got married, because I was done having kids.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, I am done. Again, another weird thing, because after Kyle and I had our daughter, I was kind of on the fence, like maybe one more. And Kyle was like, no, like I'm done. And he's like, but like, I'm not going to make any decisions. So why don't you think about it? And then I'll go get a vasectomy. Like, let me know.
Yeah.
If you really, really, really want a third, like we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I like thought about it for like a year, prayed about it. And I was like, okay, I'm at peace. Like I'm done.
Yeah.
And so he went and got a vasectomy. And then it was so weird. After his vasectomy, I've never had this experience in my life where I had like visions. It sounds so weird, but like that I was going to have another baby and it was going to be a boy.
Oh my gosh.
Like I knew this, and it was haunting me. It wasn't like a good thing. Like I was like, why am I having these visions? Like, it's like a bad feeling, because how am I going to have another baby?
Yeah.
I just had a vasectomy, and I like talked to Kyle about it, and he was like, oh my gosh, like.
That was brave.
And he just was like, babe, I just hate to break it to you. If you are going to have another baby, it's not going to be with me. He's like he would like just be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it's going to happen. And I was like, I know. It felt so real. It felt very real.
That is wild.
And I talked to my sister about it. Like, I'm not a very crier. And I got teary. Like, what? Like, this doesn't make sense to me.
Wow.
And it feels very real. So anyways, I had stopped thinking about that, and it was just gone. And so when I met Brian, I was like, again, that was one of the things, like, I'm done having kids. You deserve to experience that.
Was the vision coming up for you though?
No. And then he was like, honestly, Chelsy, like, I would just want one more. Like, he used Kellen and Finley as his own while still respecting, that Kyle's their dad. And I was like, one? And then it kind of came back. So I knew, I was like, I'm going to have a boy. I knew it.
Oh my gosh.
And
he is the cutest baby on the internet. I'm sorry to all other babies.
So cute. I can't even handle him. No.
When I'm on your page, cute. I'm like, I have to just look at Bodhi pictures. He's so cute.
Oh, he's so cute. He's so cute. And he's been the biggest blessing, just with the kids, and I feel like he really brought us all together. But
totally.
Yeah. So I'm done. No more kids.
Okay.
But yeah. It was, there's still times when it's hard work, when the grief starts to.
How long have you guys been married now?
It'll be 2 years in December. So,
okay.
Yeah, just over a year and a half. But yeah, I always tell people when they really ask me or DM me or something, I'm like, no, like, we literally had to have the peace of knowing, like, this is worth it, because there's some really dark times. Yeah. And if we didn't have that, we would have both just been like, bye. Yeah. You know, and whether that's internal issues with me or with Brian and what is, you know, dealing with it. I mean, there was a time I was like worried about Brian, like, this is becoming too much on him, you know, almost like, are you depressed? Yeah. You know, what, like, this is not like you, because I mean, he's just thrown into parenting 2 kids, and I always say he went from the bars to the burbs. I'm like, but you know, it's like thrown right into school and sports and really into my life of all my friends and managing that. I mean, he is really, like, I think everybody would say, like, he's so incredible at handling really awkward situations. He was known as, like, the dish fairy for a long time because I feel like anytime people would come to my house, that was like he would do the dishes because it was like something to do, but he could still hear and like talk to people, but be busy. Yeah. But yeah, and there's still, like I said, like I lost certain friends over it because they just can't handle it, you know? Yeah.
What do you feel like is advice you have for new widows? Maybe who are like thinking about
I always steal Amanda's Griffith's advice, and that's always the first thing I say. And it is kind of not funny, but I think people probably have a very similar reaction. And I always tell them, this is advice I got, and I'm just going to pass it along. Yeah. And I do feel like I'm in a weird situation, because do you feel this way? Like when someone you know knows someone who passed away, they like reach out to you? Yes, of course. Become like the spokesperson, right? Yeah. And so anytime anyone in town knows of somebody who has died, who has a spouse, they reach out. Yeah. How can I help this person? And I'm always kind of hesitant, because I feel like I always just say, give them my number. Yeah. Let them call me when they want to call me. Yeah. Because I do feel like people will look at me and be like, well, she's already remarried. Especially in those early stages, she doesn't miss her late husband. She's moved on. Yeah. And so I'll usually reach out and just like, I'm here if you ever need me. And they usually always do reach back out. Yeah, down the line. Yeah. Yeah. But, and everyone just grieves differently. And so I'm like, I don't know. I'm here in any capacity, but I also don't like to push myself on anybody. So my advice would just be what Amanda said. And then also not to worry so much about what everybody else is thinking. Yeah. And see, that was weird for me, because I feel like I never cared what other people thought of me until Kyle died. Oh, interesting. Because I always had Kyle. Yeah. And so I didn't care what other people said, because I knew I had somebody who had my back, who loved me and thought I was like the best person ever. And so I was like, if someone doesn't like me or someone says this, like, why do I care? You know, it doesn't affect my life. But then all of a sudden that person who has your back all the time is gone. Yeah. Then I suddenly really cared. Yeah. And I wish I wouldn't have worried so much about what other people thought, you know? Because in my mind, I'm like, I could be out like sleeping around, drinking, getting wasted every night, and I would have no judgment if someone was doing that, because I don't blame them. You know. It's really hard. But I felt very judged for being in a relationship, you know. Yeah, I definitely know. Yeah, and I think that's so hard, because like we are under such a microscope from everybody. I mean, I still feel that, and it's been almost 2.5 years. Like, people are just watching, you know, what's she doing, and to be able to like push that aside, I feel like is a huge challenge. Yeah, I mean, I still feel that way with like my kids. If they like get up in the morning and are sad going to school, in my head I'm like, oh my gosh, Chelsea, they're gonna think, you know, or things come up. Something came up at school for my son last year, and this teacher, who I don't really care for, but she's like, you know, I know you just had a new baby, and I know his dad died, you know, are they in counseling? And so it spurs up all that, is this what people really think all the time? And I'm like, no, and who cares? I just wish, you know, you gotta really let the noise be silenced and just count on the few people that you really value their opinion. Yeah. Because those people have been, it's like crazy to me that Kyle's truly his greatest friends have all come to love Brian in their own way.
It's so nice.
And to me, that's the best, like, blessing, you know? And the people who weren't really in our lives, maybe acquaintances, those are the ones who faded.
Yeah.
But those weren't our closest people, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So normally at this time I do like quick questions, but because you didn't actually really date, like do the dating thing, and most of them we've talked about anyway. I mean, you did date.
Sometimes I'm very grateful I didn't date, because I hear some horror stories.
Yeah.
From some of my widow friends. I'm like, oh my gosh, these dating apps, and like, this is nuts. Like, thank you that I did not have to deal with that.
It is definitely an experience. I will say that. There's good that comes out of it, but it's an experience. The other thing I asked you about was a song, and you said basically there's too many.
Yes, I'm like music is a love language for me, and that was like a love language between Kyle and I. Always, like, I just, lived this very charmed life. I didn't have to do anything. He would just make me my playlist, and I would be like, oh, I love it, And so, and I never know the name of any song or the right lyrics. And so when I started hanging out with Brian, talking on the phone and becoming friends, he started making me playlists.
Aww.
And so we have like all these playlists.
Mixtapes.
And then, yes, totally. Exactly. And there's just like, I feel like I have playlists that are from different stages of my grief.
Totally.
So like the right after, like just so dark and depressing, really. A lot of Lauren Daigle, like Rescue Me.
Yeah, me too.
There's one called The Red Sea Road. It's so depressing, but it's about like the grave. Oh my gosh. But
okay, let's do this. Next time you're listening to a song and you're like, this would be great for the podcast playlist, just text it to me and I'll add it to the list.
Do you have Spotify?
Yeah.
I can just send you my playlist.
I know, but I need you to pick one so I can add it to the podcast playlist.
Oh, should it be a happy one or depressing?
It's totally up to you.
Good one. I walked down the aisle to Brian.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like I never heard this song before. The kids and I and Brian, it was right after he moved here. We took a trip. We went to Portland. Because like you, I just travel everywhere.
Yeah.
Didn't you just like start traveling everywhere?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I never wanted to be in town. So I was just like gone all the time.
Go.
And so we went to Portland and randomly woke up in the middle of the night to this song, which, again, I'm getting all weird, but I swear, like, Kyle communicates to me through music. Like, weird songs just pop on all the time. And this song, we never heard it. The kids hadn't heard it. I had never heard it. Brian had never heard it. It's this Christina Aguilera song. It's about, like, the lights will guide you from above. We had to like Shazam it at 2 a.m. I'm like, what is this song?
So funny.
Anyways, I ended up walking down the aisle, and I feel like it's such a good song of like bringing together like the love from your past, like, and love in the future.
Sounds perfect.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm so glad we finally got this together.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Wish you best of luck with everything.
Thank you, you too.
Okay,
Bye.
Isn't it so easy to look at somebody's life like that on Instagram and just convince yourself that things are simple and uncomplicated for them? I totally did that with Chelsy. I'm just so grateful to her for giving us that insight into the fact that it was hard and sometimes they both wanted to walk away, but they knew that they loved each other and they were committed and then they could make it work. It's just going to help me to keep things in perspective when I'm looking at other people's page or other people's lives, frankly. Chelsy did mention the fact that I love to travel, which is true. So if you don't know this yet, a group of us from the Dating After Death community are going to Costa Rica, and there are only 10 spots left on the trip as of today, September 13th. So if you are looking for something just fun to do to get you out of some grief space, or just to take a risk, or you're looking for camaraderie with other people who get it, the itinerary for this trip is ridiculous. It's going to be so incredibly fun. Like, I am so jazzed about rappelling down a waterfall. That sounds just too cool. I've never been to Costa Rica. Check out my Instagram page at Dating After Death, and the link is there in my bio or right here in the show notes. And speaking of, so you can also find the link to that guest suggested Spotify playlist there. It is varied and interesting, so it's kind of fun. I hope you all have a great week. I'll see you on Patreon for some bonus content. All right, bye. Oh, wait, one more thing. If you're still here, my guess is you actually like this podcast. And if you could just give it some stars on the app you're listening to it on right now, or better yet, write a super short review. I can't even tell you how helpful that is for visibility of the podcast. So thank you for doing that.